A very good evening, Mr. Mohammad Hairil Fitri bin Jafar, SSTP from JPN Johor Bahru, Mr. Ruben Arumugam, CEO of Inspire.my, and our beloved audience. I am Jilega Manoharan from Sabah Chinese High School, your moderator for today's event. Welcome, welcome, welcome to Buncee Week First in Malaysia. It's a glad welcome we bring to you in this event. We would like you all to join us for a week-long Buncee event in Malaysia, where educators across the globe will be sharing their experiences and strategies for enhancing student management, along with innovative teaching practices that you can bring back to your class. These sessions will help you learn how to use Buncee for remote, blended, or flipped instruction and beyond. Here, I would like to welcome Mr. Hairil Fitri bin Jafar to give us welcome speech for this event. Hi, Mr. Hairil.
Hi everyone. Assalamualaikum and very good evening to everyone. I'm Muhammad Hairil Fitri bin Jafar on behalf of the Education Technology Resource Sector from Johor State Education Department. Would like to thank especially to the organizers, facilitators and all BUNCEEWEEK Malaysia participants. May all participants got benefit from through the Buncee apps to be implemented into their respective classroom as a very useful teaching aid. And also I would like to thank especially Cikgu Ruben as the key factor to organize this Buncee Week Malaysia. And also I hope everybody can enjoy this program and also can get many things. It will be used to your teaching and learning, especially to our peoples at the school. Thank you everybody. Good luck, all the best. Have a nice day.
Thank you, Mr. Harrell, to give us the wonderful speech. Okay, without further ado, let me introduce our head of the program, Miss Eda, to this event. Okay, Miss Eda is the strategy manager at Buncee. She is passionate about improving access to quality education and engaging students in the STEM field, especially for underserved communities worldwide. Prior to Buncee, she has worked in the public sector conducting scientific research and analysis, including the National Science Foundation as well as the Earth Institute at Columbia University in New York. So here, I would like to invite to carry on this session. I would like to invite Miss Eda to carry on this session. Hi, Miss Eda.
Hi there. Well, first of all, thank
Hi.
you so much for the wonderful introduction, and thank you to Real Fritri from Education.
Thank you.
Yes, I'm excited to be here and to kick off this awesome week of learning with each and every one of you. So this week is really meant to be a real celebration of learning, where you'll be able to take back as educators different creative strategies that you'll be able to bring back to your classroom, and at the same time, innovative ideas from educators across the world so that you can make learning fun and engaging for your students, no matter what the distance is for each and every one of you. And so with that, I'm excited to spend the full week with each and every one of you. So we have an awesome lineup ahead. And so for today's session, what we'll do is start a little bit with an introduction about Buncee. So if you are new to Buncee, we'll give you a little bit of an understanding of what the tool is and how you could bring it to your classroom in the remote learning world. And at the same time, in the future days ahead of us, you'll start to dive even more deeper, where you'll be able to understand how to bring this tool into various parts of your instruction, including STEM, literacy, learning how to make learning accessible, especially in a remote environment. And so in all of this sort of sense, I'm excited to be here. It's definitely a full international day of learning. We have participants from over 35 different countries tuning in. So in the chat, please, let us know where you're tuning in from. We're definitely excited to have you here and hope that we can all learn and celebrate, learning for each and every one of our students today. And so with that, so for today's session, like I mentioned, what we'll do is focus in on, what Buncee is as a tool and how you can bring it in a very overview sort of way into a remote learning environment, where Rochelle Dene-Poth, who joins me for today's session, will be sharing all of the different strategies for bringing it for remote and blended instruction. And with that, before we get started, we do have a few special surprises for each and every one of you. So thank you so much for tuning in partnership with Inspire, as well as our thanks for the Ministry of Education for hosting us today. As participants for this session, what we'll be doing is giving you extended access to the tool so that you can actually make sure to be able to leverage this tool in each part of your instruction once this session ends, as well as once the week ends. So please, once we share our registration form at the end of this session, please be sure to enter your information in. We'll be sending you an additional special access code just for participating in this event. So you'll have a total of up to 120 days to access your Buncee account beyond, the current subscription. Second, more than anything, so if you are tuning in, wherever you're tuning in from, please be sure to join in any of our giveaways throughout this week and for today. So we have 2 different giveaways for you to get involved in. For those that are not camera shy, this event is really meant to be a celebration of just different ideas. So as you tune into this session, please feel free to take a selfie with us and share something that you've learned with our presenter today, Rochelle, or even myself. So please be sure to take a session selfie, share it on Twitter with the hashtag Buncee Malaysia, and be sure to tag Buncee as well as 3 different friends. So we'll be able to pick a giveaway winner for this. And for those individuals that might be a little camera shy, you can also share your different ideas that you learned by participating in this session also on Twitter with the hashtag Buncee Malaysia, as well as a tag of Buncee as well as 3 friends. So I'll keep it up for another second, but be sure to share with us on social, on Twitter, your participation in the event and the different ideas that you've come across. And with that, once we pick a winner, we'll pick a winner in the next hour after this event. But our biggest giveaway today is definitely that we want to be able to support learning wherever you are, whether you're tuning in from Malaysia, the Philippines, or from India, wherever the case may be. We want to be able to give you as giveaway winners Buncee for Schools access. So what this means is that as you tune into this session and share the different ideas that you've learned by participating, you'll be able to win potentially an account for your entire school system, where you, as well as up to 4 other folks in your school or other educators, will be able to access Buncee for Schools and be able to support your learning journey, whether you're the teacher or the students that are part of your classrooms. And so this is valued at over $500 to start. So please be sure to share your participation with us, and I'll go quickly again how to do so. So before we get started, again, the first way for you to participate in today's giveaway is to share your ideas of what you've learned from this session. Share it on Twitter, add the tag Buncee, hashtag Buncee Malaysia, as well as 3 friends. And equally so, also feel free to take a photo and then also add that into your tweet. And so with that, let's get started. And so first of all, big questions are, what is Buncee? And really at its heart, it is a tool focused on creativity and using creativity as a means to deliver student engagement, as well as engage teachers really in the classroom. But when we sort of boil down to it, the questions are, why does Buncee exist and what is really the focus? So when we think about education, no matter where you are in the world, whether you're in the US, whether you're in Malaysia, the Philippines, the UK, or in parts of Africa, resource needs are definitely different across the world. But as you boil down into each and every classroom, there's always this one common challenge for each and every one of us to face, which is the fact that as an educator, every time you're in the classroom, what you notice is that you're having the challenge of meeting the needs of diverse learners in your class. So whether you're teaching 30 or 50 people in your classroom, the challenge that you have as an educator is that each and every student has different learning needs, whether that means that they have language differences, they have different abilities of how they can read different texts, or how they can communicate or problem solve just different challenges in the classroom. You have the challenge as an educator to figure out how to support each of those different people in your instruction. Now, in a traditional sense, with that concept in mind, with the fact that we as educators need to be able to support a diverse group of learners in a full classroom, some of what we've done has been a lot more traditional, where we started to implement similar strategies to meet diverse groups of people. And what I mean by that is, in our traditional methodologies of bringing education to the class, we started teaching our students with the same articles, the same passages for them to read, and at the same time, the same different assessments, with the assumption that almost every student with their different learning backgrounds would actually be able to be strongly supported with that sort of modality. And in part, what we've done as a result is, with these similar different strategies that we've implemented to an entire classroom, what we've noticed is that it's a lot more scalable. It's a lot easier for us as educators to measure the different impact that assessment or that passage might have with your kids. And it's definitely traditional. But the problem is that it's a little bit more of a cookie cutter approach, right? So we use the same strategies implemented to our different teachers, but what happens as a consequence is that we leave an unbalanced classroom for our students. So as our students are learners of different backgrounds, different capabilities, with these different strategies, what happens is that we start to leave other students behind. And that's really has different problems for our kids, because we don't have this sort of focus where we're able to dive in and support an individual student. And so what we've done here at Buncee is really use this concept of creativity to really meet the needs of individual students in your class, but at the same time do it efficiently, where you're able to support a diverse range of students. And so with that, our focus here at Buncee is really to make learning definitely scalable, but at the same time also individualized and personalized, where you're able to focus in on an individual student in your classroom. And with that, Buncee as a creative tool is a tool that really enables our students to have multiple means of representation, multiple means for them to be able to express their learning in ways that truly engage them. And lastly, multiple means of just various ways for them to get engaged in different content areas that you're learning. And so with that, obvious question is, so what is Buncee? And the true answer is that Buncee is a content creation tool at its heart. While there's so many different things that I could say about it, it's a content creation tool at its heart that really aims to help support students, teachers, or administrators to be able to easily create visually engaging forms of content. But the truth of the matter is that the content creation component of it is just one of many different offerings that are part of the entire platform. And so as we focus in as an educational tool on just the content creation component, what you'll notice is that within the tool itself, speaking to that vision of being able to give our students different means of expression, representation, and engagement of knowledge, what you'll find within Buncee is that you have access to a whole big library of multimedia options, where students are able to pick and choose ways for them to express their learning and their knowledge. So first of all, when you look at the slide right over here, on the top left, you'll notice that there's different stickers and animations. We have a library of over 35,000 different graphics, including emojis as well as 3D graphics, where students are able to get engaged with. At the same time, just going through this page itself, you'll also have access to web images. All of those are Creative Commons licensed, so it's very simple for your students to find resources, especially to support their research on the web, but at the same time, they're very safe for the students to use. In addition to that, you also have access to web graphics as well as web videos. So in your platform itself, you can actually access YouTube videos and Khan Academy videos and embed that on your page, on your Buncee page, so that you can also interact with that. At the same time, you also have the ability to record your own audio or your own video. So you can give that personalized touch into your Buncee creation. And last but not least, you also have the ability to add different assessments into your Buncee. So whether you want to give your students, a free response question or a multiple choice questions, you'll be able to put all of this information or all of this different media into a Buncee. And again, the idea behind this is that as a content creation tool, our hope is to be able to give you as classroom educators and students all the different media options that you might ever need in order for you to be able to create and express and share your learning without any sort of limitation. And so that goes without saying that in terms of all of the different things that you could create with the tool itself, you'll be able to also access or to create a host of different multimedia options. So including digital stories, you'll be able to do book reviews. You could create creative journals at the same time as other individuals are using it for video reflections as well as for virtual field trips. Really, the truth of the matter is that the possibilities are really endless in the ways that you can create content with the tool very easily. And so just big questions here. When you start to focus in on how this benefits or supports the classroom, as a classroom educator using Buncee, the real idea here again is to really give you as educators the ability to represent course concepts in multiple ways and do so very easily. So again, speaking back to the reason why Buncee was built, the idea behind it is that not every student learns the same exact way. And so we shouldn't expect us as educators to be able to represent concepts in ways that really don't fit back to the learning styles and preferences to the diverse group of students in our classrooms. Moving forward, other ways that our students are using the tool is really to give them that voice and that choice. Again, speaking back to the needs of varying students in our classrooms, some of the challenges are for them is that they need to be able to have the different opportunities for them to represent learning in ways that match their learning styles and preferences so that they could build confidence and also get engaged with the content. And really, when we think about all of this, it's not something to take for granted because it's really helped to engage our students. So this sort of creative means that we provide with Buncee has really made an impact on our classrooms all around the world. And so as you'll notice in this image right over here, these are just different examples from our community that have shown that, by using Buncee, their students have been fully engaged in content. And in fact, this educator herself, she actually shared that on the last day of her school, they were doing their state reports, and you can imagine it as being, this tiring, overwhelming sort of project. But on the last day of school, her kids were so engaged by using Buncee that none of her students actually wanted to leave class because they continued wanting to actually create their work. And so that's really how empowering it is for our students to be able to engage in content creatively in ways that, make sense for them. And with that, it's really made a difference in terms of the learning outcomes that we've experienced with our community. And so I'll give it a range of examples from folks that have shared their experiences from implementing the tool. And I'll give it a quick read, but 91% of students met the grade level standard for English language arts when using Buncee, and that was a middle school. 82% was the grade level average of students since implementing Buncee. Prior to that, it's been 66%. 80% of students want to use Buncee for their science writing, and 77% of students in an intervention class actually went from high risk to some or low risk. And so what you'll notice is that with this creative approach that we bring to deliver in the classroom, what we notice is that it's really able to support our students no matter what grade level they are and no matter what subject area they find themselves in. And so with that, Rochelle is actually our guest speaker for today, but I think her words summarize really well the sort of impact that we see creativity does bring to our students and that we hope for you to benefit from. And so she said, using Buncee, students can find what they need to be creative, communicate ideas, and think critically about the work that they are doing while having fun during the creation process. It promotes student engagement because they can truly create something that is authentic and meaningful to them. And it enables educators to learn more about the students in the process. And so I think that's a great summary of, our hope about creativity and how we can use creativity as this means to engage our students so that it can make an impact where, learning is not just a task to them, but it is very fun. And at the same time, it's meaningful because it's authentic to them. And so with that, Buncee is really a tool with a lot of endless possibilities to create with. So our folks are using it for communication purposes. At the same time, they use it to engage parents, engage their students, to enable student voice. But really, the possibilities are endless. And so that was a quick summary now about Buncee as a content creation tool. And it's a lot to learn about. But the truth is like I said, as a full platform, you'll now have access to a wide variety of different features beyond content creation. In fact, we give a lot of different tools to further help you engage your students. And so I'll do a quick summary of that right here. But beyond creating your content on Buncee, you as an educator or as a student are actually able to publish that content online or offline. So imagine being an educator that might have resource limitations and maybe internet is not as stable for some of your students. You'll still be able to create interactive, visually engaging content that will get your kids engaged and still be able to print and hand deliver those as packets to your kids. At the same time, within the platform, especially as we come to think about us being in another remote environment, what you'll also be able to do is engage your students in discussion. So beyond creating that content that your students do for their project, at the same time, they'll be able to share it with one another or even with you, and they'll be able to add comments to each of those buncies as well as reactions to get other folks engaged in their work. And then, of course, who doesn't love a badge? But within the tool itself, we definitely have gamification abilities in it. So as you create your content on Buncee, you'll also be able to unlock different badges as well as rewards to make learning fun, especially when your students are away. Your students can create this work, but at the same time have different rewards to get them continuously engaged with the work that they're doing. And so that's a quick summary of some of the other tools that we offer to engage our students, but there's always much more. And so when we think about how Buncee can support you as a platform as you start to teach your kids from a distance, I would just want to share some of the other features that are available to you. First of all, you have access to thousands of templates, across different grade levels and subject areas. And so if you don't know where to start, if you don't know how to create a Buncee, but you're looking for ideas and inspiration, you can access a template and there's no issue for that. And you'll be able to do it across different subject areas. But more than that, we also have this feature called Ideas Lab. And so Ideas Lab is an expanded version of our templates where you'll be able to access, different creative, innovative ideas that are actually sourced from our community. And they're all classroom ready, but you'll also be able to access all of these different ideas so that you understand how to actually bring this creative approach, whatever subject area it is, into your practice. And so we'll share how this feature works, but you have the ability to access templates as well as ongoing inspiration each and every day as you use the tool. And lastly, you also have the ability to create collections of your work. So aside from being able to create your content, you can also create a Buncee board, which allows you to create collections of Buncee work, where you're able to share your Buncee creations as maybe resources for your colleagues and other teachers, at the same time as resources for your kids. So everything is all in one place and very easy for them to access, which is very important as you think about, being remote, where you're worried about, does your student have access to the right information? And then last but not least, you also have the ability to create assignments as well as view your progress of your students. And so within Buncee, you're able to create different classes. So you'll be able to manage your students remotely. You'll be able to create your Buncees not just for fun, but also as assignments to them. And then you'll also be able to track what their progress is. Have they started their work? Are they, what grade do they deserve from it? Do they need help? You'll have an entire classroom management system available to you too. And another of course, future here is that as you create your classes, again, going back to that need for us to be able to understand the needs of diverse learners in our class, you'll also be able to send differentiated activities very easily. And so within your classes that you manage in Buncee, you'll also be able to group your students, for the different levels of learning that they might be, and then send targeted Buncees to them so that, you can help meet them at where they are at in terms of their learning levels. And of course, we're fully integrated with Google and Microsoft. And so if you are a Google Classroom user, you'll be able to create your Buncees, share it with Google Classroom, especially if you want to be able to manage it in that way. At the same time, we also are fully integrated with Microsoft. So there's several benefits to bringing Buncee into your toolkit. And lastly, so we just covered what features are available to students and teachers, but as administrators, there's honestly even much more benefits to you, especially for those that are going to be able to access the Buncee for Schools platform. So as administrators, what you'll be able to do, and I'll do this pretty quickly, is synchronize your rosters. So you don't have to worry about creating each of your student accounts. You'll be able to set permissions and manage your users and understand, where they are at, what they've created. You'll also have the ability to customize your ideas lab. So this is that library that I mentioned where you're able to push different or you're able to access different innovative, creative ideas, also from the community of how to bring Buncee into different parts of your instruction. But as administrators, you'll actually be able to manage this content and ensure that your teachers and students have access to the right quality information that you want them to have access to as a Ministry of Education. And then equally said, you'll also be able to customize all of the templates you have access to, all of the different graphics that are available to you in the platform. And lastly, of course, as administrators, just know that Buncee is data safe. We don't collect your information, and we're very much known for it. So we are iKeepSafe privacy certified. We are signatories of the Student Privacy Pledge, and at the same time, we are certified by the DigCit Kids. So your data is always safe with Buncee, and it's not something that you have to worry about. And so with that, we covered a lot of different features that you have available to you now as participants of this conference. But essentially, Buncee is really beyond a content creation tool. It's really one tool to support the entire school community. So there are varying features that you could take advantage of, whether you're a student, a teacher, or administrator, to be able to bring that learning to your students, no matter how far they might be from you. And with that, I thought I'd just share, one of the statements one of our community members shared, which is exactly what we've experienced. So she said, Melissa Stark from the New York City Department of Education out in the US said, Buncee has allowed me to provide a one-stop landing place for my students to help me progress monitor their goals. In the past, I would focus on so many applications that I would be overwhelmed. One of the many positives of Buncee is that it allows me to take part of so many different apps and have it all right at my students' fingertips. And I think that summarizes, everything that we just covered really well, where part of the idea here with Buncee as a platform is that as we give you the access to it, our hope is to be able to support you where you don't have to worry about learning 10,000 different applications, that you'll be able to do different parts of it really in just one tool so that you don't have to worry about, does your parents know how to use it? Do your students now know how to use it? Or do your teachers or colleagues rather know how to use all of these different tools? Rather, you could focus on learning on one tool and at the same time just focus the rest of your class on just delivering that instruction. And so, so we covered a lot, but if I could summarize in a few quick bullets of how do you achieve remote and blended learning with Buncee. First of all, you could quickly create fun and interactive, accessible content for your students. Second, your students can easily create engaging assignment submissions. 3 is that you could create safe spaces for discussion and engagement. 4 is that you'll obviously be able to keep your families and guardians connected and involved in the learning process. 5, as administrative management capabilities are already there, you don't have to worry as an administrator how you're going to be able to oversee all of your students and teachers remotely. And then last but not least, but most importantly, we're safe for the classrooms. You don't have to worry about data security with Buncee. We're COPA, GDPR, FERPA, NYSE D2D, etc. compliant and more. And so, yeah, so we're obviously here to help. So we'll be sharing that access code again with everyone, but just know that as you leave the session or as you tune in for the rest of the week and start getting engaged with Buncee, you can rely on us to be able to help you get started or ask us for any of your questions to get on. It's definitely, we're here for you. And with that, here is my contact information. If you want to just quickly take a screenshot of it or so, feel free to get in touch with us if you need any help to get on. Here's my contact for email as well as Twitter and LinkedIn. And with that, thank you so much. And so what I'm going to do now is I want to leave some time for questions. So please, feel free to drop in your questions in the chat. But before I head off and share the experience with Rochelle about her work with Buncee, let me just show a few different examples of how folks are using the tool, especially as a student and as an educator in a remote environment. So this is just a quick example I'll do from an elementary student. And so this is just an example, and I think it's really powerful because it shows you the importance of creativity and giving your students that creative edge in the way that they demonstrate their learning. And so this example, again, is a book review made by a student. So this is, of course, a Buncee, but the background itself is a graphic pulled from Buncee. The cover image here is an image she uploaded about the book that she learned. But as you go through the pages, where it gets a lot more unique and very interesting is that, when we think about the traditional book reviews or having your students get engaged with reading, what we tend to notice is that our teachers, of course, go back to the traditional sense where they have our students read the passage, read the book, and then write about each of the different characters that they learned in the book. But what Buncee was used for in this example by the kid was actually to take that learning to the next level. And what I mean by that is the kid, instead of actually writing about each of the different characters that she learned about, what she did was actually pull a different background from Buncee to represent sort of the scene of the passage that she read. But at the same time, she also pulled the different stickers of characters that represented the people that she read in the book. But more importantly, what was even neater is that she actually recorded her own audio to explain the significance of these characters. And so I'll do a quick play of it here.
Ragweed's curious, he talks back a lot, argues, and he is a...
And I think this is great, while I play it really quickly as an audio, but what's amazing about this is that as an example for a kid, they have this creative ability to be able to represent their understanding. But as for you as an educator, you actually know now that they really did this project. The fact that they have spoken their own audio means that it's really authentic to them, and it makes it a lot more engaging for the kids. And similarly said, so moving forward on this next page of the student's Buncee, what she actually did was recreate an entire scene of a book, of a chapter that she came across. And so what she did in this Buncee is actually pull different stickers, backgrounds, animations, and she actually pieced together an entire scene that she learned about. But at the same time, instead of writing about this passage again, she recorded her own audio where she actually explains the significance of this entire chapter, why she picked this scene, what it meant to her, and why it's important to draw this as something to summarize for her teacher. And I think this is a powerful representation of just how creativity can engage our students, but make learning very authentic to them. And moving forward, just quickly, another thing that you'll notice is that she recorded her own video as well. And so she had a text, she had another image, all of this she pulled within Buncee. But you as an educator, especially when you're thinking remotely, this student was able to reflect on her entire passage using video. So you as an educator are actually able to see your kids and still build that connection, but at the same time, again, know that learning is still authentic to them and that they're not maybe, exploring the internet for answers. So I thought this was another great example. And then just moving forward, this is just where she synthesizes that book to show how it relates back to some of the science projects that they were doing. So she uploads different images. So in a Buncee, you can also upload your work. And I thought this was a great example of just a project made by a student, an early elementary student. But in my next example, this will actually be an example of how Buncee is used even for upper level students, whether it's for secondary or post-secondary learners. And so this is a book report done or a project report done by the student sort of perspective. So what you'll notice is that all of these different stickers, the backgrounds that you notice is actually pulled from Buncee, so the student's able to piece these together to create a visually engaging project. But at the same time, what's special about this is that as you continue to read about the project of the student and the visuals that they put to support it, what you'll notice is that there's a lot of body of text. And this is important for us to think about because when you have a lot of text on a passage, right, knowing that your students have different reading levels, it's hard for us to be able to personalize that text and know how the student can actually respond to it very effectively. And so what we've done as a partner is really work with Microsoft Education to help sort of address that challenge of reading for our kids. And so what we've done is actually brought in Immersive Reader to Buncee. So with all of this text, our hope was to be able to partner with Microsoft to be able to support any sort of language-based learner, whether that's a student struggling from dyslexia or a student that might speak a foreign background, not native to the one that they're learning in class. And so as you click on Immersive Reader, what it'll do is any body of text that's found on a Buncee can be taken into this immersive experience where they'll be able to personalize it to match up to their learning styles and also their preferences. And before I dive into it, the power behind this is that Microsoft has done research on it, and it's been proven to also improve reading comprehension by 10%. And so it's a really meaningful and impactful tool for any sort of language-based learner. So I'm just going to skip some of the tips over here since I'll walk you through it. But what you'll notice now is that as I opened up Immersive Reader, this is the body of text that you saw in a Buncee. First of all, what you'll notice is that we can have the text be read aloud.
Unfortunately, deforestation reflects more than a change in forest.
And what's powerful about that is that as you notice the text, of course, being read aloud, what you'll notice too is that each of the text words are actually being highlighted. So as a student plays this, what they'll be able to do is start to build that one-to-one word association for this text, meaning that as a student maybe is learning a new language or learning how to read, each of the different words are actually being highlighted so that the kid will actually be able to see, oh, this is what forest looks like as a word, or this is what cover is, or this is what deforestation sounds like. And so that's the really cool part about the word highlighting. At the same time, you'll be able to change the speed, so you can make it a lot faster, slower, depending on the preference of your students. And so if you have students that might have, learning differences in terms of, visual impairments, they could speed up, the text so that, it's read a lot faster, especially because they're a lot more sensitive to how things are read. You could also change up the voice selection too. Now moving forward, so as you continue taking this body of text, what you'll notice on the right top hand panel is text preferences. So we'll click on that. But as a student, you'll also be able to make it bigger. So if, again, your students have visual impairments, they'll be able to personalize the text that way. You could change the spacing of it. So if your students have difficulty, reading texts that are too close together or too far apart, they'll be able to change the spacing of it. They could also change the font, depending on their preference, as well as the themes of it. So again, supporting those students that maybe have learning differences, they'll be able to change the themes based on what supports them best. Other features that are there is that you can also add syllabification. So as you select syllables, what you'll notice is that it takes each of the different words and separates them. So if your students are still learning how to enunciate different words or in their vocabulary, they'll be able to turn on the syllables so that it'll break it apart for them so that they'll be able to better understand what they're reading. You can also identify parts of speech. So you could color code it. So if there's a noun, a verb, an adjective, you'll be able to help your kids to understand, what are the ways that you can build a sentence, or, where do parts of speech actually fall into developing a sentence. And then lastly, some of the other things I just want to highlight is that you can also change the line focus. So you'll be able to have your students zone in onto different parts of your text. Whether it's 1 line, 3 lines, 6 lines, they'll be able to change the focus. But last but not least, you'll also be able to change the language of your Buncee. So as you pull in this text, you'll notice that obviously right now it's in English. What you'll be able to do is change it to another language. They have over 100 plus languages at this point, but you'll be able to change it, let's say, to Italian. and it'll help the students actually learn another language or translate it back to English if English is the language that they're looking to learn. And so that's a super quick summary about Immersive Reader that you also have access to in terms of a student. And so with that, I just X'd out that immersive experience, but that's another feature that you do have access to. But just quickly moving forward here, I want to share, just examples of how other educators are able to use the tool itself. So we covered how students are able to use it, but in this sense, this is just an example of how an educator is using it to teach language, to their students. So what you'll notice is that they're able to record their own video, so they could play their own audio back.
首先，切损
And this is wonderful, especially in instances where your students are obviously not able to see you all the time. You'll still be able to record your lesson as you'd like, and also be able to share it with your students. You can also type in different languages depending on your keyboard. You could also add your own audio. So again, it allows you to really bring a diverse touch to the way that you personalize all of the media to create your lessons. And you'll notice over here, you're able to add different images from the web. You could also pull different backgrounds. And some of my last two examples before we head off here is, I thought this is just a great example of how an educator came to build connections for their students. So this is an introduction made by a teacher to introduce her students, especially for the summer, into summer school. So the teacher actually added her own Bitmoji. She added, the different graphics from Buncee to put this together. But I thought this was wonderful because as they were doing remote learning and doing it through the summer, you don't get to see your teachers, or your students rather. So what she did was actually record her own audio to be able to introduce herself so that they'll be able to hear her voice.
Welcome to Summoner City 2020.
And I thought that was a great example. But going forward, then she uses it as a little bit of a hyperdoc where she's able to put all of the different graphics together to share about what they're going to learn for the year. And then also gives them, free response question where they can actually input some of their information and submit it back to her. So I thought this was just another great example of, the different ways that our educators are using the tool. And so this is a visual where different Buncee stickers have been pieced together to be able to recreate an entire scene and help our students understand, just different adjectives and how they relate to, the environment that they live in. And so this was a great example in the sense that it shows you how teachers are able to just visualize concepts for their students. And it's very engaging for their kids. And with that, we shared a few different examples, but I think more than anything, it's a great opportunity to be able to hear from, our practicing educators ourselves. And so I'm excited to sort of pass the screen here to my dear friend Rochelle to be able to share her learning strategies and how she brings Buncee into her remote learning practice and blended instruction. And so with that, Rochelle is an amazing educator. I'm always inspired by her. She is internationally recognized and even won the Making It Happen Award at ISTE 2019. But she is a local educator out here in Pennsylvania who has done an incredible work in education space itself. And so Rochelle, I'm excited to hear your examples and experiences.
Thank you, Eda. And I always love listening to you talk about Buncee and all of the different possibilities with it and sharing the examples that you've shared, just so everybody gets an idea of the range of possibilities with it. I've been keeping up with the chat and some of the questions that have come in there. And so hopefully once we go through and I share some of the ways that I've been using it, some examples, and also show everybody how to get started with it, you'll feel a lot more comfortable with that. And so to get started, I'm going to share with you some strategies for achieving remote and blended learning. And in my school, when our schools closed back in March, we had to come up with a lot of different ways to provide instruction for our students. And so I'll be sharing some of that with you, but also giving you some ideas of how you can use Buncee for so many things. But just quickly to give you an idea of where I'm coming from, I am a Spanish and STEAM teacher from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, the United States. I am also an author, consultant, and an attorney. So I love school. I love learning. And the thing that inspires me the most is to find opportunities for students to really create, to connect, to have choices in showing what they're learning. And also, I really value the feedback that I get from my students whenever I bring technology into the classroom. And I can say that over the past 5 years that we've been using Buncee, I have seen it used in so many different ways in all of my Spanish classes, in my STEAM course, which is for students who are around 13 or 14 years of age. But what I've also seen is bringing it into my own classroom. As a teacher, in my dashboard, I can see all of the buncies that my students have created. And what I've noticed over the years is that they're not just creating them for me. They're using Buncee as their tool of choice for their other classes. And so I love seeing that they found a tool that really helps them to share their learning, to create something that is really meaningful to them. And it helps them to retain the content more. And of course, it's definitely fun to get started with and to keep creating with. And I love seeing what they create, because when I see their buncies, it gives me things to ask them questions about. It helps me to understand them. We build relationships. There are so many other benefits beyond simply using it to create something. And it is something that I've been recommending for a long time because of the possibilities, which are definitely endless when it comes to Buncee. So looking at our concerns and considerations we might have all the time, but even more specifically now, as we are looking at, if we have not already started the new school year, but the upcoming school year, I know for me, in my school, we're not totally sure what that's going to look like. And I'm very reflective, and I'm looking back at the end of this past school year and thinking about areas that I could improve. And the biggest one, and the reason that I use Buncee, is because you can really build this community for your students and with their families and have this space that you can interact in. Now, I love being in my physical classroom because those interactions, the conversations that we have are so important. But in the absence of being able to be there together in that space, we need to think about how can we set something up that will kind of help us to facilitate those connections, especially if we're not starting our school year in our classroom. And for me, as a Spanish teacher, the only Spanish teacher in my school, I have my same students year after year. And so I do, for most of my classes, have the benefit that I already know most of my students. I've been able to connect with their families. But what about teachers who don't have that, and you're meeting your students and their families for the first time? So having a space where you can create something and engage in conversations to build that community with students and their families is really important. I also noticed that back when schools closed, and just in general, there are so many ways that we can communicate with families and with our students. And I know that when I talk to the students in my classes, I value their feedback so much. And I wanted to find something that worked for them. And taking all of our classes that we have, if it's 6 or 7 or 8 classes that we're teaching, and the same thing for students, classes that they're taking, all of that communication that they're getting, whether it's email or whether it's messages or newsletters or whatever we use, it can be overwhelming. When you can have a tool and a space that enables you to do all of those things in one space, it makes a huge difference. And so that is something that when our schools closed, I started to share with teachers in my own school and also other teachers when they were looking for ideas of how to get information to students, to families, or as administrators trying to get the information to anybody in the school community. So a big part of this, and I'll share a lot of examples and show you how to get started, is how can we build that community and build those relationships in this space? And in the examples that Eda showed you, you got an idea of the capabilities of creating with Buncee. With over 35,000 graphics, you have audio, you have the video, you can put links in. So it really does enable you to connect with students, but it also gives them that power to build their skills in the highly digital world that we're finding ourselves in, especially now when it comes to learning and what school is like for us in these days. Communication. I love sending emails and making phone calls or using a messaging app, but all of that to parents can be overwhelming. To us as teachers, we know it's the same thing. If we can find a way where we can streamline and share everything in a space, and what I've been trying to keep in mind for myself is find something that works for the families, for the parents, for the students. Be consistent. Have a routine so that people know what to expect. And so I'll share some examples of how I used it, but just throwing some ideas out there. If you start your week off with weekly announcements, if you're an administrator and you send messages to your staff or to the school community, be consistent and have a routine where maybe on Monday, that's something that you share and you record a video so they can see you and they can hear you and they can build that connection with you, because that's so important in the absence of being in that physical space. Also important is to think about parents and families and their support of students at home. There are so many different digital tools out there. And what's nice is when we can use tools that not only benefit us as teachers, students, but we can use tools that families can also have fun creating together, and there's not a big learning curve with it. And so being able to share ideas and show parents how to use a technology. I've seen in my experience, I've had students come and tell me that their parents for their jobs actually use Buncee to create presentations for something they had for work. And I thought that was really amazing. And there are benefits, right? This is something that we can use for so many reasons, endless possibilities. Connecting with other teachers and our colleagues. There are so many templates available that you can choose from, or you can just start from plain canvas and create something. So if you're looking to thank somebody, if you want to just send a hello or share a message, getting the year started, so many options that are in there that you can just build those relationships, not just with students and their families, but also with other teachers in your school and colleagues. Also, thinking about teaching, for me, I can talk to my students in class the ways that I would explain something in my Spanish class or my STEAM class, but there are so many options out there that maybe I want to create something that if my students are not in school, they can go back to it. Or if I want to share it with families so they can help support students at home, there are a lot of options that we can use within Buncee. And it's not like you just have one or two choices. As you've seen with Eda's examples she showed so far, there are so many possibilities with it. And I was enjoying looking at the chat and seeing the ideas come through. And so it's important to just share content in ways that we're not all sharing everything at the same time and not overwhelming. And putting it in a space like a Buncee board, for example. If your school, and I'll show you a Buncee board as well, but if your school is trying to share information and maybe you don't have a school website, you could create Buncees with links to lessons, with welcome messages, with ideas, with anything that you want, and have a Buncee board, and each teacher, each administrator places their Buncee on that board in that one space. And so it's easy to find. Looking at options for asynchronous and synchronous learning. This is definitely going to be beneficial. I know for my school, we're looking at having a hybrid model where some students will be with me in my classroom and some will not be. But even looking back at the end of this past school year, being able to give students one Buncee presentation that I made with everything that they needed in it, gave them that opportunity to kind of work at their own pace. They could join in class and we can kind of go over it. So you have a lot of options for using this and for sharing this. And I will say, I did see questions about Google Classroom. You can share the Buncees through Google Classroom and also with Microsoft Teams. Lots of information out there, putting it into a space where maybe on one slide, you can store 6 different videos for students to watch and even have links to other websites for them to explore. It's all about the layout that you pick and finding it so it's visually engaging, it's easy to navigate, and students can access. Maybe you have 20 different resources or links that you want students or families to go to, but instead of having one long document with all of those links or having students have to go to a bunch of different places to find it, having it in this one space really does make a difference. And I know from my own students, when I talk to them about what's working, what's not working, they really liked that they could find everything that they needed if they just kept the one Buncee bookmarked or remember the shortened URL that I use. They were able to find everything that they would need for our class as our school years ended. And the best part is having students create. And I've had a range of students, some who say, can't we just draw? And I say, yes, you can, because in Buncee, you can draw. There's a feature that enables you to draw. Or finding what they want. With 35,000 plus choices in the graphics library, every student can find something that's interesting to them or that really helps them to create something to show what they have learned. And I've seen that because they're making the choices and they're really thinking, at least in my Spanish class, if we're learning, say, vocabulary about traveling in the community, they're being very careful about what they're choosing in the graphics library, how they're adding it onto their canvas, what they're creating with Buncee, and attaching more meaning to it because they have so many choices with it. And so it has definitely been a big impact, or made a big impact on my students for learning, but it's also made a big impact on me for getting to understand my students and their interests when it comes to learning. So moving on to some examples of what this might look like or how you could use this in your experience, whether you're in your physical classroom space or virtual learning, which is nice as well, because when it comes to thinking about tools to use with Buncee, you can use it anywhere. It can be done in your classroom. You can share the links. You can share it out through Google Classroom, Microsoft Teams, and it enables you to have those connections with students, for them to be able to connect with each other and even to go beyond that and make global connections. But it also helps them to really enjoy learning because they get this chance to create something that's meaningful to them. And so I would like to share with you talk about some of the challenges that I had initially, or just even on a regular basis, things that I think about when I'm giving students choices and providing opportunities for them to create. So back to when schools closed, I was thinking, how do I take what I'm doing in my 40-minute class period and put it into the online space? That was a challenge. All of the options that are out there, what are the best choices for my students it's going to enable them to really create, to engage in learning that's meaningful, and to do something that doesn't necessarily require us to be in the same space, because even though some of them connected with me, not all students always have the access or the time and space to really work on something. So having a space that they can work through at their own pace, create on their own time, or if it's a lesson that I can share resources, they can collaborate with each other by sharing other Buncees on a board, for example. Those are a lot of the considerations that I'm constantly thinking about, but even more so now in the last couple of months and looking forward. Very important is how can we support students and families? And as Eda shared, immersive reader, for example, when we're looking at language learning, whether it's for me, for example, as a Spanish teacher, wanting my students to be able to pronounce the words, if we're looking at younger learners who are developing their language skills, or if we're looking at students and families who speak a lot of different languages within our classroom or in our schools, we need to have something to support them. And with immersive reader being part of Buncee, over 100 languages, that is not a concern. Just another example, elementary teachers. I know some of my friends were very concerned about how are my students going to be able to read, or I miss reading to my students and I want them to be able to develop those skills. Lots of features within Buncee that enable us to do that. And so having the immersive reader, having some features like the video or the audio helps us to support students and families. And of course, the authentic learning that happens because of this, just even looking at the examples, see what catches your eye. Look at the animations, look at the coloring, look at the backgrounds, the font, the different layouts that are in some of these examples, and then just dive in. That's the best advice that I can give, is just find a template or get started. And so I will pose these 3 questions to all of you and then show you some examples. But big piece is, how can we build relationships in the classroom, especially if we're not actually in a physical classroom space? So we use technology to start to build those. And so I will show you an example here really soon. Also, how can we create opportunities for teachers to learn more about our students and for our students to learn about each other? Thinking about social emotional learning skills. Very important for our students to not only develop their own self-awareness, but to go beyond that and have a social awareness and learn about people that live in other parts of the world. For me, we do project-based learning, and my students have connected with other students in Argentina, also in Spain, and being able to use Buncee as that space where they were making those connections. So how can we do that? How can we leverage this tool for that? And then, of course, we want students to have authentic and meaningful opportunities to create, to build confidence, to be comfortable, and just to take their learning to another level. And I have definitely seen the increase in my own students as they've created with Buncee, the ways that they've used it, and even with their confidence level. It's kind of funny how my students won't necessarily want to speak in front of their classmates live in class, but they are totally fine making a Buncee, recording their video, even having to record it again and building that confidence because they're at home, they make the video, they're comfortable with the way it turned out. Then we can do the presentation in class with the video playing and they're fine. So giving them that space where they build that confidence and they're comfortable, then once it's in our classroom spaces, it really does lead to more authentic and meaningful learning for students, but also a way for them to build those relationships. So when our school closed, I tried to think, like I said, about how do I take everything that I was doing, all of the things that I was using in my classroom, and provide it to my students when I don't necessarily know that they all have the resources they need, that they don't necessarily have the access to devices or the ability to connect if we have class meetings. So what I did was I made this, and it was just one slide for Buncee, and I shared it with my students. And I told them that if they only saved one resource or if they only bookmarked one thing and it was this Buncee, they would be fine for the time that our school was closed. Because what I did is I had 3 different websites or resources linked on this page. So if my students were to click on the virtual learning overview, it took them to a presentation that I said what to expect for our class meetings, how to prepare, things like muting yourself or anything that we would want when we're having Zoom meetings or Microsoft Teams meetings. Gave them a couple of reminders. I also used a Google form for them to submit assignments, which was linked here. And then I had a Padlet because I taught 5 different courses and there were so many materials, and that was something my students had been used to. But what I also did was I used Buncee to add some different backgrounds and animations, and I recorded a video of myself just talking to them to explain that. And so for you, as you're looking at the upcoming school year, if you haven't started yet, and maybe you want a space where you can introduce yourself to your students, or each week you share what the tasks are, it can be done in just one slide in one Buncee, and it's fun. You can make it personal to you and reflect your interests, have your video on there, talk to your students so they get used to seeing you and to hearing you. Also, many of you may have seen out there for a while now, people are creating virtual classrooms. And there is a template with Buncee. The Merrills had shared a template. And what I did is I took, and I'll show you on the next slide, I took one of theirs and then I used some of the background, the templates within Buncee to make my own classroom. And so this is something that I shared and created for each of my Spanish classes. You could do this as well. It is a space where, again, my students, if they just have the one link, they could come into our classroom, and each week I could change the video. I could tell them what we're doing for the week. I could give them updates, whatever I wanted. I could always go back and edit it. And then in my classroom, I put different objects on my desk. I made it kind of more similar to what my classroom might actually have. But even fun things like on the bulletin board where it has a class outline, you could put text there and have students click on a link that takes them to an activity or to something else that you're using for class, and it's just stored within this one space. But even better than that, this is one that I got from that template, is this part of my virtual classroom. Now, like I said, my students and I, we use a lot of different learning tools because I like giving them choices. And so if I'm having them play a game in class, or if we're having a meeting in Teams or something, I want them to be able to access whatever it is without having to take the time to type in the site or to navigate through a lot of different materials, because that, of course, with all of their classes can be overwhelming. So in my virtual classroom, that first slide had the introduction for me giving whatever the directions were or just saying hello. And then here on this case, I have different tools that are all linked. So for my students, all they would have to do would be to come to this bookshelf, click on the link, and it takes them to the other website. And now you can, of course, add in anything else that you want, but it enables you to create your classroom in the virtual space and make it as personal and as authentic and fun as you want to, even adding in your Bitmoji, but just so many possibilities that help it to become more of a normal experience in what has not been a normal experience for us for learning in the last couple of months. And so those, like I said, the template, there are so many templates available within Buncee, but you can use this to make your own, or you can start from scratch, choose some of the different classroom layouts, and just add to it whatever you want. Also, something else that you can do, think about projects that you assign or assignments. And when we're in our classroom space, I know that we all have our different ways of talking and interacting with our students. We have our humor, our facial expressions, everything that makes us us. So while we can find a lot of videos out there that are already created that we can add in, or if we're giving instructions, of course, we can type the instructions out. We can hand it out on a worksheet. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but we can also use this power within Buncee to give the directions to our students and to talk to them using the video. And so I created a project for them to do about talking about their family. I did give them some bullet point instructions. I shared a template from within Buncee with them, but I just wanted to explain it and have that be so they could kind of go back and listen to it again if they wanted to, instead of having to, I would just talk to them about it. And so being able to do the recording and share that with them so they can go back and listen to it again, but also so that they can connect with me. And if they've not had me yet, being able to kind of build that interaction and relationship so you're familiar with your teacher, and also when the students create, that you become familiar with them. So one example, if you think about projects that you have, assignments that you give in your classroom, or lessons that you teach, how could you use Buncee just like this to give resources, share a link, record audio, put in a video? Checking in with students is also important. So while we were not in our classroom, and if students were not able to join in our class meetings, but even beyond that, if everything was just the regular look of school, we're going back to our classrooms, checking in with our students, sending messages to families, or as administrators, tech coaches, anybody, being able to create a video and send a quick Buncee just to check in. I did this to ask students, how's it going? Do you have any questions? Is there something that I can help you with? Just for them to really be able to hear that, like, I really do care how you're doing, instead of sending just an email. So being able to make those connections and build those relationships in this format, also very important to do. At the end of the year, as our school year wound down, unlike other years where we get to say our goodbyes and I thank my students, I also wanted to thank them. And so I used one of the templates that were in there actually for sending a postcard, and I just changed a little bit. It's nice that you can totally start from scratch, or you can use one of the templates available, get an idea from Ideas Lab, and maybe just change a few things about it. Change the background, change the font, add in some different characters, 3D objects. But I created this and I sent it to my students just to say, have a good summer, and to thank them for joining in. And I thought this was a way better opportunity for me to do that, because they could see, they could hear me, and to continue making that connection with students. So a few ideas. And this is an example that I got out of the Ideas Lab as well. And I love this because of how much is on this one slide. Now, one thing that I should say as well is if you look at my screen, there is the symbol of scissors. Like with Google Slides, if you enable your Buncee to be copied, which I will show you, you make it so other people can take it and then they can make it their own and add to it and change it however they want. But also, so if you have multiple presentations and you just want to pick different slides from your presentations and put them into the same Buncee presentation, you can do that. And that's actually what I have done with this one. So I've clipped other Buncees into this. But this one, I think, is a really great example of how much you can put into one slide and how simple it looks and how visually engaging it is. And just imagine if you want to give students, like in this case, directions for something. You have the different steps, you have your text. Each one of these could actually link to some other resource or website. Students, as Eda mentioned, or families can use the Immersive Reader to have it translated. It can also be read to students. So when we're looking at the younger learners and hearing the sound of the language and being able to build those skills, having this technology all available in this one space is amazing. And it really does make a difference. So if you're teaching a lesson, maybe there's 5 steps. If you need to give lessons for an entire week to your students, these could be Monday through Friday that you list on your screen. Now over here, if you look at all of these little icons that are on the screen, if you count them up, there are 15. Imagine if you have 15 different websites, videos, whatever it is that you use in your classroom, or maybe you just want to share 15 different resources with students over a period of time, rather than having a long document with links or something. This is simply what you could do. You could choose an image from the Buncee library, put in some text, and then each one of these could be linked to some other site. Again, all within this one space. Beyond this image of the book with all of the colors above it, that could actually be a video of you talking about it and giving extra details, or just saying hello or giving an overview. So many different possibilities that you have for using this, regardless of what level you teach, the role of education that you have, and even in education or not. This is something that families can also use to do a lot of fun family activities. And it's nice when we can take these tools and they have a purpose far beyond just our classroom and the content that we're teaching, but they're really good for life and preparing our students with skills they need to transfer beyond our classroom. And so with that, I'm excited to get started with showing you how to actually use Buncee, how to create on Buncee. And I hope, please connect with us on Twitter. We would love to see what you're creating. Share your Buncee, tag us in your tweets, because right now is the time to start creating. I found that in different presentations and conferences, we learn all of these ideas, but then when we leave, we kind of lose track of time and don't always get back to it. So what you want to do is definitely get started today. Make your account, go to buncee.com and see what you come up with. And I'll show you how to navigate those things. But I just found this background yesterday, I believe, and I just loved the color of it, just added some other text to it, some animations and some stickers, and thought it was a lot of fun to create with. And so let's take a look at the Buncee dashboard. Now, when you want to create an account, you want to go to buncee.com, and I am already logged in, but we'll just pretend. So you go to buncee.com, you want to create your account, and you can always find things on the Buncee site. Just as an example, if you want to see what resources have been made available for remote learning, there is a whole separate site that opens up with that. There are daily trainings that happen with Buncee. There's a big event coming up in a couple of weeks. Also, so there's lots of ways to learn about it. It's very easy to navigate the site. So once you create your account, and I'm just scrolling down here for a moment, it'll tell you that you want to go to your dashboard. So I'm going to go back to my dashboard. And when I log in, things that I see, and if you're logged in, things that you will see as well, If you have classes, this is where my classes are. So I do have multiple classes that use Buncee. Students can join in by sharing a code with them. You can also add students in yourself, creating their own accounts. And it's nice to be able to go in, and I'll just show a quick example, access all of the different Buncees that students have made. And as I mentioned earlier, students that have me from Spanish 1 through Spanish 4, and sometimes even in my 8th grade course, I can see all of the Buncees that they've made over the years, and I love seeing when they've used it for other classes besides my Spanish class. So being a teacher, you have access to the Buncees that they've created. You can create assignments for students to do, for example. Also in my dashboard, Buncees that I've created appear, and so you can scroll down and see all the Buncees. You can also create folders. And so let's say you have specific Buncees that you have created for, like in my case, Spanish 1, Spanish 2. Maybe you do presentations. Maybe you make greetings. There are a lot of different options that are out there. And so Buncees, or if students, because this happens, sometimes even though they're in my class, they forget their login information. So they will end up creating another account and then share their Buncee with me. And so those will appear in that separate tab. And what you can do is you can open them and view them, but you can also copy them as well. And I've had students who have created different projects that I have just been totally amazed by. And I've said, do you mind if I use your Buncee as an example? Because I want to change their name on it, or I want to maybe add another slide to it just to give kind of a context to what the project was for. So those are Buncees. Also, 3 dots are your friend. And so if you want to edit it, if you want to duplicate it and make a few changes, if you want to add it to a folder, clicking in that space is where you can add it or move it to folders as well. But another thing that I like about it is the more Buncees that you make, you might forget what the title of your Buncee is. So you can always search Buncee. So if I type in about, because I made an about me, it opens up anything that has that word about in the title. So easier to find. So those are Buncees. And then boards is where you can gather a bunch of different Buncees, either ones that you're making and you just want a place to keep them, to save, to have for a reference. It could be like in my case for Spanish 1 or any of my courses, I have students add their Buncees from that class to the same Buncee board. Because 1, I can go back and look through all of them in that same space. 2, when we're in class and students are presenting, it's easier to access them and have them on display. And 3, I can share this with other teachers, other examples. And because of Immersive Reader, what is also nice is that anything that students create, we can share them with other students around the world. So if people want to know, for example, what it's like to live in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and my students did a project, we can share that with anybody and they can translate it and understand what it's like to live in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. But it's a nice way to also curate all of those presentations the students did. So when they come back and they ask me if I have an example of work that they had done, I can easily access their Buncee projects that they've done while they've been in my classroom. So it's very nice to do that. That's one example. Another example is when you have different levels. Let's say you're working with different teachers in your elementary school, or if it's middle or high school, it doesn't matter, higher education. And maybe you all want to just share Buncees that you're creating. In my school, just as an example, and I was talking about all of the different videos, elementary teachers were creating lessons for 1st and 2nd grade students. And they were very worried about, how do I share the videos or the worksheets, or how do they hear me in this space? And so they created a Buncee, and just scrolling through, have a lot of different content in it, but having 6 videos available, all just on one slide within a Buncee, and easy for students to work through, also easy for parents and families to support students as they work through that. Another example I'd like to show you before we actually get to starting is this one from a friend of mine's students. When she teaches them math, she has this stuffed animal called the doodlebug. And that obviously, because they're not in their classroom space, was a big deal. And so she has been using Buncee ever since I first showed it to her to teach lessons. And if I scroll through, she puts examples on the screen. She uses the camera to put her picture as she's thinking, so the students are actually seeing her and Doodlebug. So she's teaching the lesson, using Buncee as the space for the images, also for recording video, giving encouragement, and also supplementing with other videos that can be added right from within Buncee, and just making it really nice for students to be able to connect with her and hear her and see her. And so many examples I know with questions that were in the chat about younger learners, I have seen with kindergarten, I've seen it with first grade, all the way up. Lots of ways that you can use it, adding in different links. Here's just one more example, similar to a HyperDoc, if anybody has used that. So each student would have 5 different assignments, but rather than have to go to a lot of different spaces or keep up with maybe multiple emails or anything, using this where you can add in graphics, you can add in a video, you can hyperlink and give instructions in a space where it's not overwhelming for students or for families. And with that, let's go back to the dashboard. So a few other things here on the top. Eda had already talked about the Ideas Lab, creating, and one other thing that I'll say is whatever you want to create Buncees, it's easy to create, and I don't know if it's more fun to search the different templates that are available or to just create on your own. And so 2 places that you can start if you're in your dashboard, all of your Buncees, clicking on the plus to create a new one, or simply creating on the top. And once it opens, the pop-up for now, you want to choose Create on Buncee 3.0. And as it opens, one of my favorite, I have a lot of favorite features, but I will say because I do create so much with Buncee and there are so many choices out there, a lot of times there are certain backgrounds that I really like because of the layout or the colors, and going through and finding them, I don't always remember exactly what the category might have been. So it does have recently used ones. And so as you work with Buncee, you can easily find ones that you've used in the recent past to create, but also going through and seeing what is available in different categories. And so for education, I saw a talk in the chat about interdisciplinary. And so if you're looking for ideas for that, maybe for teaching math, physical education, or beyond that, scrapbooks, or if you're using it for social media, I know with different Twitter chats, or if you're creating things for a school website, or if you use a lot of different mediums besides just the normal ones that you would use, say email or messaging, there are many options here that you can choose from. There's activities, greeting cards, you name it. So you can always search the categories. You can type in a search item. Also, what comes up are different templates, and you will see in the Ideas Lab as well as in the templates an overlap because they are the same ones, and so you can find them in either place. But let's just say as I'm scrolling through that something catches my eye and I'm not really sure what it's about. So I'm going to go with the Cooking Throughout History. It'll open up a preview. And so this is a template, and everything that you see here is already available for you. You would then just use the template and you could change anything about it. But what it does is it enables you to have a structure to start with, and it definitely saves you time. So thinking about teachers and preparing, we don't always have a ton of extra time. I would rather have time to just be creative and see what's there and have something to start with. But I also enjoy starting from scratch. And so that's what I'm going to do. Now, the first thing I'm going to do is give it a title. And I always like to just title the date for some reason. So I'm going to make it July 20th. And what you'll notice is on my canvas, I have the option to change the background or to add an item. Navigating your toolbars and things that you use will be at the bottom. To the left is where each slide will be. To the right is where the items that you have added onto your canvas, onto your background will appear. And so first I'm going to change my background. Now, you will see as you go through and you're searching that there are so many backgrounds available. You could type in a keyword to search. The most recent ones that are at the top have been added. Like I said, just yesterday, the one here I found on the left. But another, again, what I really like is recently used. And so since I do, like I said, create a lot of buncies, it is sometimes hard for me to think, what category did I search to find that? And so I can always go through and see what I have recently used. If you're curious to see what other people are using and what's trending, not surprising that we see a lot of these virtual classroom spaces about me trying to build relationships and get to know students. So a lot of options that are out there. But for right now, I'm going to pick this one right here because I love the colors of this. And so then you have your background. Everything that's on there is just part of the background, so you can't move any of those. And then I want to add my first item. I can either click the plus here or I can click it on the right. But before I do that, a few other things. On the bottom, now that I've added my background, I have the option to change it, to duplicate it, to get rid of it. Also at the top, I can change the size of my canvas. So when it opens up, that's the default Buncee presentation size, but you do have other options available. So as I scroll through, you can see if you want to make a business card, which I've made business cards, playing cards, but there's also the custom option. So if you have a specific size that you want to make it, you can do that. And for anybody who uses Wakelet, you also have the Wakelet cover image or the profile header. So you can do that as well. But I'm just going to leave it as the regular Buncee size. So let's say I want to add an object. Now, when it opens, these are all of the choices that you have available in the media library. And I always wondered, I figured that there must be a reason for the different colors because I'm very visual. And what I love about it is that it's easy to navigate and find what I'm looking for. And so just on the far left, the objects, the items that are in yellow, the text, the shapes, and the drawing, that will require you to create something, to either enter text, to make the shape, or for those students, like I mentioned, that just wanted to draw, they have that option that they can use it as a space to draw in. So anybody who is, for example, an art teacher, imagine teaching a lesson to your students about a certain art style, and you record yourself talking about it, maybe even doing a demo of it, and then you share that with your students and you encourage them to draw something on their own, and they can use that. That's a great feature. We have objects like 3D, we have animations, stickers, messages, and emojis. You can also search the web, and these, as Eda had mentioned, when it comes to copyright, those, it's all covered, so you don't have to worry about any of those issues. You can also upload, whether you want to record a video. If you have a video that you have on, say, YouTube or somewhere else, another link that you can do, take a picture, and then as a teacher, I can use this for my assessment and add in options for my students to answer a question, like an open-ended or a free response, a multiple choice. And I did see that Eileen had mentioned being able to put in QR codes as well. So lots of choices. So right now, whatever I type in here, it's going to search all of the possibilities. So I'm going to type in school, and it loads from all of those 35,000 options, anything that's connected to school. Now, the mix of these, they could be 3D objects, it could be an animation, it could be a sticker, it could be an emoji, it could be any of those. But if instead I want to be specific and I want something related to school that is animated, I choose the animation and type in school, and these are things that are animated. Now, as I hover over it, you'll see that there is the button for play. And if you want a preview, you just click on it and it'll show you what that will look like once you put it onto your canvas. And the best thing about this is rather than having to find an image and save it and do all of those steps, I can simply decide that I want to add on 7, 10, however many different images onto my screen. So I am just going to click on 2 for right now. Once they're added on, You can move them around with the red dots. You can resize it, make it smaller or bigger, whatever you want. You can rotate it, move it to the front, move it to the back. And also what you'll now notice is on the left, I have my one slide, and on the right, I have the images, the graphics, whatever I've added onto the screen. The toolbar is at the bottom, and you can change anything that you want. I can always go back and change the background. I can do a lot of different things with it. Now, let's say that I want this to be a link to another website. At the bottom, you'll notice that there is the ability to type in a link. So I'm just going to type in Google. And then there's also an option for audio. I could record up to 5 minutes giving instructions, whatever I wanted. If I wanted to read something, if I wanted to explain something for my students, I can record the audio and attach it to that. But also, if I have already recorded audio before, I do have that stored in my library. So there are these different recordings in there. So if it's something that maybe it's a lesson that you've explained, or it's a message that you've given and you don't want to record it again, you can always just pull it from your library. So just to save time, I'm going to add that. And then I'm going to add some other characters. So this time I'm going to use stickers, and I'm going to type in people. And newer, very colorful. You can see it's very connected to what's happening in the world. We have essential workers, lots of beautiful images, which is what is so visually engaging about it, is just there are so many to choose from. And if I just decide that I'm going to pick, I'll pick 3 here. So if I click on any 3 different ones, actually I'll click on maybe 4 of them. However many that you click, it will add all 4 onto your screen. And once it does that, you'll see that on the right side, they're all there. And while this will not be necessarily the most beautiful right now, just to give you an idea of what you can do, just put these all around. And then maybe I want to add something different. Maybe I want to record a video to explain what it is that's on there. I have up to 3 minutes. And if I start the recording, and then I'm going to stop, you kind of just let it go and work through, and it will give you the prompt. If I want to upload it, just takes a few seconds, kind of works a little bit, and then now it's here. And I can make it smaller or larger. I could pretend like this is a TV that's on the wall. And a couple things to mention. One, when you are just still in edit mode, the links will not go to the website, the audio won't play, and the video also will not play. You have to be in preview mode for that to happen. So if I hit preview, it will open up, and then you'll see that the video is embedded. If I hit play, it plays, and there it is. And here you see the play button. So if I hit play, it's the audio. And oops, if you notice there's the link, if I click on the link, it then takes me to Google. And so the power of this is that you can truly use just one, this could be your one slide, although you could add more to it that has text, or it has other objects that are linked with information for students or for teachers to use, but it really does make a big difference. Now, if I want to go back and edit it, I can, but a few things about this across the top. So you can have comments, you can like it, it will show you how many views. Of course, there's the immersive reader, and this symbol to clip the Buncee, I could then take just one slide, whatever I want, if I wanted all of them, and that's what I did in my presentation from a little while ago that I showed with you, or shared with you. Now to share it, settings, if you are creating, say, a presentation for students and you want them to work through it, but also to change it to add their own information or to use it as a template for them to create, you want to make sure that it's copyable. Also, if you're working with other teachers in your same grade level, content area, you could decide, you know what, I'm going to make this Buncee for this chapter or this concept, and you can then copy it and just adapt it to your own needs for your own classroom, so it will be copyable. You can share it by code. by email. And when you send the email, it comes up in your email. It looks nice. It has a message. You can also check the email status. You can share it with Buncee users, so in your classes, or if you know other Buncee users. RSVP, if you're sending invites or any type of email, things like that, inviting somebody to a party, for example, a parent open house. Socially, you have, of course, the Google Classroom and Microsoft Teams, but you can also choose one of the other social platforms. And then when thinking about accessibility for students, you can download the Buncees. And so if you choose some of the activities, or if you put information in your Buncee, you can print them out as well. Also great for making signs for your classroom. I know in my school as well, the school nurse was making newsletters and things to use to share about the pandemic, and also sharing information about different health themes that she chose throughout the month. And she found that this was just amazing for being able to do that. My students create information to share about digital citizenship. Also, anything that we want, I have them make a lot of different things that we can use in my classroom, because it's much more authentic to see things that they've created. Now, if I go back to my Buncee and I hit edit, this is, of course, that was just a quick, just to show you where to find things. But when I go to add another slide, I could add a blank new page, but I can also do what's called stitching. And that's kind of the same concept of when you would take a slide from, say, a Google presentation and just take one slide and put it into another one. So when I click that, what it does is it opens up my library of any other slides that I have clipped from my other Buncees. So in the presentation that I did a little while ago, you will see there are some of those slides that are in there. But maybe I just want to use some student examples, kind of just to show across the board what students have created. And so I'm going to choose 3 different ones to add in. To give you an example here, I'll pick one more. I'll pick this one. Now I add 3. And the best thing about this is, even though you've added these different slides in from different Buncees, and they were created by somebody else, you now have the capability to change them around. And so this student who made this, and I have all of these characters talking about sports, I could move any of the characters or anything around on the screen. And the same thing with other examples. If you have students who are learning a language and they're labeling things in their ideal room, I could move anything around on the screen as well. So it's nice to be able to take pieces from other presentations that you've done, or to use some from things that students have done as well. I'm just going to pause there for 1 second and go back. So creating is easy. You just have to find things in the library that you want to get started with. But coming up with ideas, a lot of times I will ask my students for some ideas. And so I did want to share with you, just to give you some possibilities of things that are out there. And I did share some of those for the elementary. But if I go to this K through 6, so if you're teaching kindergarten through 6th grade and you're looking for some examples, there are some Buncee boards out there. And if I scroll through, you can see some things like flashcards. If you want to make anatomy flashcards, for example, 3D objects are in Buncee, students can learn about the different organs in the body. So that's one example of how you can use it. If you are learning about sharks, for example, or just think about anything that you teach, but looking at this, seeing the animations, giving directions, and having it have a lot of different features in the background and providing it for students. Now, again, you can make this more personal to you as the teacher, because you can add in the audio recording. You can even better add in your picture or a video, whatever your comfort level is. But it's also for students to create with. So if they are learning about sharks, or if they have been studying the human body, or talking about parts of a cell, or learning about foods, anything, whatever the content is, it gives them that space that they can create with and share their voice. So rather than writing down a lot of text about summary of, say, a book, they can talk to you about it. And if I also want to go back just to show you a couple other examples. So thinking forward, how do we prepare for this year? One, for my students and even for myself, creating an about me. And so if you are looking for ways to make those connections, to facilitate communication with students and families, then use one of the templates and create an about me. Put in what you do, your interests, anything around that defines who you are, and share a video to talk about your class, to talk about what students can expect, to just do as an introduction. So that is something that I did last year with my students, and I had them create as well. And it was a way for me to get to know them. And so if you are starting the year not in your physical classroom space, using this as a way to get to know your students and for them to get to know you is really powerful. Another template that's available, Meet the Teacher. So nice thing about this is, as you can see, everything is laid out for you. It gives you the prompts. I didn't change anything other than putting in my name and recording a short video. But this is something that you could create to share with families so that they get to know you and they feel comfortable asking you questions, but also for your students to be able to see you and to hear you. And you can change anything about it. So if I went in and I decided that I don't want to have a QR code here, maybe I want to have a link to a website, or maybe I just want some kind of other picture or object, you can delete it. It always prompts you and says, are you sure? You can even get rid of this or make it bigger or smaller. So while the template gives you the structure, there are a lot of things about it that you can change. You can even change the background, whatever you want, just to make it personal to you, but also it's beneficial to make it personal to the students as well. In terms of changing things like the font, for example, when you create, as I said before, your toolbars are all at the bottom. So if I decide that I don't like that font, there are many more to choose from that you can decide, maybe I'll try this one. The color of it, you have a lot of options. You can even scroll through and make your own and see as you slide along the bar as it changes. You can go back and undo that if you decide you liked it better the first time. The alignment, everything is at the bottom, which is nice. Also, if you want to see what this might look like, but with a different background, you can totally duplicate the page and then use one of them as a space to kind of try some different things, change the color around. Maybe I want to see if the color is a little bit different. And this is why it's great for students as well, is because it is easy to find and to navigate and to create, and getting to understand them and to give them an opportunity to find something that's really interesting and gives them choices makes a huge difference in their learning. And I know for me, just over the years that we've used it, being able to see what they create, and a lot of times learning from them, because I'll say, where did you find that? There's so much out there within this platform that I don't know all that there is about it. And sometimes they put in different animations or stickers or something, and I didn't have any idea. And so it really makes a good conversation between us. It builds those relationships, and it shows them that we're learners too. We don't always know everything that there is to know. And if you're looking for ideas, I highly recommend that you go to, one, you follow Buncee on Twitter. You check out the Buncee blog, because teachers are sharing ideas all the time. So many things out there. I really like to say it's the tool that you can use it for everything. How to use Buncee for everything. And again, it doesn't matter what range you're working with as a teacher. You can create and use it with all students, but also just being able to share the information and give students the opportunity to create something that's meaningful and engaging to them, and to be able to go back and see that. And if I share one more thing with you on subscribed boards. So if you have your own Buncee boards, you can also subscribe to Buncee boards created by other educators. And scrolling through here, I have a lot that I've subscribed to. You will get a notification that tells you when somebody has added Buncees to that board that you've been subscribed to. And there are a lot of different possibilities. One that I'll open up that I love to share is parent newsletters. And on this board, you can see over 3,500 views, but Laurie has created these parent newsletters, and they're very consistent in their structure. But what she has done is she shared newsletters with families about ideas that they can use and things that they can do at home, and has an image that she chose from the library. She has a link to some other site, but it's all done just within that one space. So think about the way that you're communicating with your students, with your colleagues, with the school community, and how can you use this to streamline that communication. But in streamlining it, it's not that you're taking anything away from it. You're actually adding so much more to it that makes it so much better. And so just looking at this, imagine being the parent that receives this and sees the boat across the bottom, has access to different activities for use with their children, or even as teachers, what can we share with our students to be able to give them more opportunities to learn? Lots of different possibilities that are out there. So if you want any of these examples, I know that we can share these with you, but I do love scrolling through and seeing some of the different possibilities, creating a family tree, history, geometry. It does not matter what you teach. You can find a way to use and create with Buncee. And it's fun for us to create, but it's also fun to see what the students create as well. And with that, I'm going to pause and go back to Eda and see if there is anything else that I can add.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Rochelle. That was a really comprehensive and honestly incredible just demonstration of the work that you've done. But in terms of the questions, it actually looks like our team was able to cover it throughout. But some other main things to sort of highlight here is, first of all, thank you to everyone for tuning in and spending your evening, especially if you're out on the other side of the world with us. It's definitely been an awesome international collaboration with you all. So what we'll be doing for this is actually sharing a certificate as well as your extended access for Buncee. And so someone on the team will actually be dropping in the link to your registration form. So be sure to include all of your information there so that we can provide the access code as well as the certificate. But truthfully, honestly, it's been a really incredible time for me to be able to just, virtually travel with you all today. And Rochelle, thank you so much really for everything that you've shared.
Thank you. It's great to be here. Great to see the comments. And I hope that everybody connects with us on Twitter and shares what you're creating. I would love to see it.
And one last thing is, because there's always one last thing, there's our giveaway for our winners. We'll be announcing it in just about 10:30. So if you have posted on Twitter, you have a few more minutes if you'd like, but basically be sure to share something that you've learned through this session, tag 3 friends as well as Buncee with the hashtag Buncee Malaysia so that we'll be able to find it. And we'll announce the winner at 10:30, so about an hour, or 45 minutes rather. So stay tuned for that. And honestly, thank you again for everyone's participation. We'll look forward to seeing you for the rest of our sessions this week. So again, tomorrow's session will be now focused more deeply in STEM and how you can bring Buncee and really sort of learn the different strategies to take away for the entire K-12 sort of space. With that, thank you so much to everyone, and I'll pass it back to you, Rochelle or Ms. Delega.
Good. Thanks, everyone, for joining in.
Thank you, Ms. Eda and Ms. Rochelle, for your great explanation about using Buncee for remote learning. Dear viewers, please stay tuned for our tomorrow's session. Dear educators, please fill in your attendance form based on the link that is appearing on the screen. Then don't forget to check our Buncee Twitter page to check for the winners list after an hour of this event. Dear our beloved educator, once again, I would like to remind you to stay tuned for our tomorrow's event with another exciting information about Buncee. Till then, we'll catch up with you all tomorrow. Bye.
Bye.
All right. Bye, everyone.
See ya.